Let it lay. Look, we're all human beings, and I'm a human being. I think I was born with an overdose of common sense. That doesn't appear to be the case with Donald Trump. Good, bad.
You know the prospect exists that Democrats retake the House and have an impeachment vote, throwing it to the Senate where you hope to serve. Have you thought through the prospect of Gary Johnson sitting in the Senate as there's an impeachment trial for President Donald Trump?
And that's what excites me about the job. That's what excited me about having been governor of New Mexico for 2 terms. Looking at both sides of these equations, and as governor, look, ultimately I sign or veto legislation. I may have vetoed more legislation than the other 49 governors in the country combined, but I really enjoyed that process, and I think I ruled over that process with just common sense. I think the people of New Mexico saw that, and that's right now what I'm reaping. I'm reaping a lot of good seeds that I've sown in New Mexico my entire life. Donald Trump, on the other hand, I think the seeds he's sowing right now are going to have some negative implications for all of us for decades to come.
Hey, Governor, nice to have you back. Thank you for being here.
Michael, thank you so much. Thank you for being this voice in the middle. Look, it's somewhere in the middle. It's purple. I wore my purple shirt. Did you notice?
I did notice. Looks good on TV, by the way. Thanks, Governor.
Thank you.
I want to know what you think. Go to my website at smerconish.com. Answer this question. Does impeachment talk at this point help or hurt President Trump? We'll see what you're all saying on my Smerconish Twitter and Facebook pages as you are voting. What do we have? Hang loose, Mr. President. Gotta love Gary Johnson. Make him a senator. New Mexico wouldn't have had unity with him and Bill Weld. We would have had unity with he and Bill Weld and universal weed for all. Hey, John, I knew the weed subject would come up, especially when Gary made reference to seeds. Was I the only one thinking that? But Guy was ahead of the curve in that regard. And I'll say this about Gary. Fiscal conservatism and social liberalism, that's, I think, where most of the country is. Not the ideologues that we see on television, you know, both in the pundit class and the media host class and the elected representatives. Right? That's not a representation of who's on the other side of the camera. People on the other side of the camera are not ideologically driven and conservative on everything or liberal on everything. They're somewhere in between. That's what he speaks to, in my view. Pope Francis is visiting Ireland this weekend. He does so under the cloud of new devastating details about 1,000 victims of sexual abuse here in Pennsylvania. Will the church do anything to address and redress the trauma and the pain it has inflicted? And where are the calls for federal action, hearings, speeches by national leaders? CNN's Erica Hill recently interviewed some of the sexual abuse scandals. He spoke out about the issue today, saying the failure of ecclesiastical authorities adequately to address these appalling crimes has rightly given rise to outrage and remains a source of pain and shame for the Catholic community. But he's under intense pressure to take action to ensure accountability for church officials who have long ignored or covered up abuse. The latest case is in my home state of Pennsylvania, where the Attorney General issued a nearly 900-page grand jury report. It details abuse of more than 1,000 individuals by hundreds of priests going back 7 decades across all of the state's archdioceses. Since its release, a state hotline created for church victims has received more than 500 calls, and other stories keep coming across the nation and around the globe. And yet, as an article in Justia called Clergy Sex Abuse in Pennsylvania, No Justice is Intolerable pointed out, Marcy Hamilton wrote, there has yet to be a single hearing or even a speech by a national leader addressing, let alone condemning, the systemic sexual abuse of thousands of children across the United States. Marcy Hamilton joins me now. She's a senior fellow in the program for research on religion at the University of Pennsylvania and founder of the nonprofit think tank to prevent child abuse and neglect, Child USA. Are those words still true? I know that a few days have ticked off the clock since you wrote that piece. Has anybody with a national platform, an elected official, spoken on this issue or called for hearings?
Not one. And in fact, I'm still waiting for anybody in Washington to say the 3 words, clergy sex abuse. It just hasn't happened.
Pennsylvania, Marcy, I know from your work, is unique insofar as each of our archdioceses has now been examined by a grand jury with appalling result. But do you think those results would be unique if a similar microscope were placed on any other state's archdiocese?
There's no reason to think that Pennsylvania is distinctive. We would see the same numbers. We would see the same callousness on the part of the institution. Unfortunately, this is baked into the Catholic system at this point, and it's not just true here in the United States, it's global.
You know the criticism. Memories fade, witnesses disappear. These are all unproven allegations.
Well, here's the problem with that line of reasoning coming from the bishops. It may be true in other crimes. It's not true for child sex abuse victims. They remember the room. They remember what they had on. But in addition, the secrets that the Catholic Church holds are in what they call their secret archives. The reason we have this nearly 900-page report is because the secret archives were forced out of the hands of the bishops in Pennsylvania. The facts were forced into the light. That's how you get these grand jury reports. They have the facts. When there is no justice, when there's no ability to go to court, you can't get to those facts. The bishops hold them all.
In Pennsylvania, if we had a hypothetical 50-year-old victim of child sex abuse, a prosecutor could pursue a claim against the perpetrator of that 50-year-old. However, that same 50-year-old would have no civil redress. What explains that disconnect?
What explains the disconnect is the lobbying by the Catholic bishops and the insurance companies in the state of Pennsylvania against even extensions of the civil statute of limitations. When the 2005 grand jury report came out from Philadelphia, which I worked on, we were able to persuade Harrisburg to pass an extension from age 30 to age 50 for criminal. No one would do anything for the civil claims in the state of Pennsylvania, and they haven't done anything since.
Well, is the concern that this could financially wipe out the church?
That's what they say. In fact, the church is the largest landholder in all of the United States. The Philadelphia Archdiocese owns so much property, it's impossible to track it. So no, that's not what they're worried about. What they're really worried about is that there are even more secrets they're holding on to. They're worried about their reputations. They're worried about their power.
One final aspect, I think it's really significant. The standard of proof differs between a civil and criminal prosecution. So you can be 50 and theoretically still meet a burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, but somehow you're deemed unworthy of by a preponderance of the evidence. Help me explain that.
So for the civil claims, it's just a preponderance of the evidence, over 50% certainty about the truth of the evidence. What's happened in Philadelphia and across the country is that we have facts coming out. We have facts now across the entire state of Pennsylvania, but we have lawmakers that continue to take the side of the bishops. They don't want these civil claims. Why? Because when you file a civil claim, you don't get a line that's in a report. You get a full complaint. You get all the facts. What this grand jury report is a summary. The lawsuits would open the door, and if we were to revive the expired claims, that would open the door to finding out what really happened. And that's what the bishops are fighting.
I'm so glad you were here. We have now put this on the radar screen as a challenge to elected officials. 20 sold for at a recent auction in a state where the median house price is $224,800, and some have sold for even more. What the heck is the case here? Joining me now is Butch Emmert from the Emmert Auction Associates of Rehoboth, Delaware. He's been doing auctions for 40 years. He did this auction. Mr. Emmert, explain this to me. It's baffling.
Well, it's something that's really pretty much only individual to Delaware, Michael. I mean, you know, it's been going on since the 50s. Originally in the mid to late 50s, you know, these low-digit tags were traded for political figure, you know, to political figures and, you know, and people of means as political favors. And then in the 60s, they started really trading for, you know, a fair amount of money. And we've seen tags like, you know, tags like this number 20, we've seen them go from $5,000, say in 1962, to $405,000 today. You know, it's like in Delaware.
It's not exactly.
Michael,
It's not exactly an attractive plate. I mean, I'm looking at it as you're holding it up. It's as nondescriptive license plate I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, Michael, they like them in original beat up condition. You know, you can get this tag remade right now for a couple of $100s, but it'll lose a lot of its value. So, you know, this is the Delaware thing. They like them low, they like them beat up, and they like them on their cars.
Okay, 1 through 3, I know you told me on my Sirius XM radio program, are held by state officials. So the first one up for grabs is number 4. Who has it, and what do you think it's worth?
Well, this is a tag that originally was owned by a very large and prominent banker named Tyler McConnell. His bride, his widow,